listening to. Oh, I didn't even. Okay. I saw one really cool artist is gonna come to Berlin. I would love to go. Let's see if I can go. Um, Alrighty. So hi everyone. Welcome in and thank you so much for joining us for this a bit of a different webinar. Five green flags to show when you're talking to investors. And this I think comes because I think a lot of the advice out there is telling you what not to do. And I want to try and tell you what to do, or at least like some of the parallels that we've been able to see. Maybe I introduce myself first. So my name is Anais Cisneros. I'm the founder of Amela. For context, I also used to be a VC. I work in both the Latin American and the European market. So I used to be a London-based VC. Invested early stage across all of Europe, and then also like a VC for a San Francisco fund, investing across Latin America and fintech infrastructure. Previous to that, I was a founder. In my first startup, I did not succeed because I actually had no idea how to fundraise. And once I figured out what fundraising was, I was like, oh my God, this is like I was trying to build a fintech, a B2C fintech. And if you ever try to build a B2C fintech, you need to be someone who actually raises a ton of capital because cost of acquisition for users is way too high. So once I realized that, I was like, no, this is not going to happen. I need to cut my losses now and maybe come back stronger, right? And so Amelia is like my second venture. Amelia has actually raised angel capital. We are not necessarily like a super venture backable type of company. So we have a few insights, you know, from my own journey, but we also have some insights from the journeys of the many founders that we accompany. And I can like confidently say now that we help people who historically do not raise. I'm not saying that racing is the only parallel of success. I definitely do not think that. I think it's important that you're able to sell and you build a product that people love. But it does help a lot if you have big dreams to achieve it with a big budget. It also gives you like space to be able to pivot and change things up and like just you feel a little bit more free and you have a better journey. So today I'm gonna be drawing from those experiences, mine, the ones from the gazillion Amelas and Amelos, because so many times we also help men who are the ones racing. And hopefully we shall be answering some questions. Maybe as some context, I'm gonna give the first bit of the presentation just like as a free flow information. But if you have questions, like feel free to drop them in the comments. And then afterwards I'll be taking them on. Like if I feel like I can actually answer it while I'm on the slide, like I'll try and include it. And if not, I'll just pass it for afterwards. And then towards the end, I'm gonna have at least 20 minutes of like pre-Q&A. So you can just ask about anything. Like I mentioned, I think some people here I already know. So some of you might know part of this content. The people who I don't yet know, let's see, you know? So let's start. So first, I want to explain why this matters. So part of the reason why Amela exists is because I realized both as a founder as a VC that actually it's quite rare to have a team with women race. Specifically in the case of all female teams is 3%. 2 to 3%. Sometimes it oscillates, sometimes it goes down to 1.5. And then I'm like, why? If you are a mixed team, the odds with you are that 10% of those teams race and 88 goes to men. Not to make, let me show you my next slide actually. Because the thing is, okay, it's not greatly animated, but when you learn facts like that, you can do one of two things. Still help me mute the one person who's unmuted, please. Awesome. All right. So when you learn facts like that, which I hate to highlight, but at the same time, I think it's just important to have information. We can do two things, right? Like you can cry about it, like me in that window, being like, ah, no, such a disgrace. I'm never going to make it. Or you can learn how to play the game. And so today I want to focus on learning how to play a game. And what I mean with that is if you're a woman who's looking to fundraise, this will be incredibly helpful for you. If you're a man who is looking to fundraise, still helpful, right? Because if you have already, so to say, better chances, let's make sure that you take the Olympic gold on this. So yeah, we want to teach you how to learn. No, we want to teach you how to play this game. So first, I think I'm going to give a little bit of a background on the investor's mind. And if I want to simplify it, I always tell people that investors look for two things whenever they look at early stage investing. And a lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today is investing in software-driven companies. So not necessarily, let's say, like a massage house, but just an app that has a gazillion people doing matches between massage people and people who want to be served or something like that. Investors look for two things. So one of them is they look for a really great team that is very smart and can pivot a gazillion times in order to solve the problem that they look to solve. And then they also look for a big market. Like, is this solving a problem that's massive, is it focused on a market that has a lot of money? Because in the end, investors want to make a return. A lot of the talk that I'm going to talk today is actually about institutional investors, not so much about angels. Angels sometimes think a little bit different, but I felt like this would be a good parallel because you can draw the most generalizations from institutional investors because institutional investors, like, it's their job to actually invest, right? And that's a lot of the experience I've had. So institutional investors mostly look for patterns of success. And it's a bit ironic, right? Because if you talk to them, a lot of them will tell you, you know what? I'm trying to look for the outlier. I'm doing something that no one else is doing. I'm a contrarian. But at the same time, if you look at the data, most of the times they end up investing in the same type of archetype of person with very similar background, like the usual of, hey, if you went to McKinsey and if you went to Harvard, you're likely going to get a term sheet. If you didn't, it's going to be a bit tougher. But there are a few reasons why, right? And today it's not about judging them whether that's right or wrong. It's about understanding why they do what they do and how we can use this into our advantage. So yeah, overall, investors look for patterns of success. And to put it very simply, like, we all know that getting into Harvard, I did not get into Harvard myself. I tried, is really hard. And so they think if this person was able to get into Harvard, that means that they probably worked a ton because being smart is just not enough. And then secondly, that they have a really great network and that network will help them get connected into the right people whenever they want to sell their product, into the right investors, whenever they want to raise us next round of capital to fund the business. Like, they just think this person has done something really hard and is able to succeed. So therefore, probably the next thing that they do, they will do something really hard and they're also going to succeed. They usually ask you, can she or he or they build it? Is this the right person to be doing that? Will it grow? Can it survive a miracle? Or actually, this is a line that I stole from a VC friend that I just thought was brilliant. He told me, whenever I meet a founder, I try and think, how many miracles does it take for this thing to be a real thing? And it is true. Sometimes when you are building, you will be like, oh my God, I need a miracle. And sometimes those miracles do happen and sometimes they don't, right? But as an investor, you start thinking, okay, how many miracles need to happen for this to be a reality? Investors tend to be on the positive side, or at least that's kind of like the job description. You gotta be an optimist if you want to invest, let's say, in Airbnb when everyone was laughing about it and to make outside returns. But at the same time, you also want to make sure that you kind of hedge your risk. And so that's why we look for patterns. And I would say that fundraising in many ways is half logic, half instinct. And part of what you're going to be doing is, in a way, you want to look like food. And what I mean with you want to look like food is you want to look like something that's investable. You want to look like something that is appetizing, something that is likable, things like that. Now, I'm going to give you the 5 red flags, and then I'll give you like a tiny bit of ideas of what not to do. And then I think we'll go into Q&As. So the first green flag, I would say, is having clarity about the problem and the solution. Like, instead of saying things like, we are revolutionizing efficiency with AI, with a lot of jargon, and maybe like, I don't know, like I used to be a VC, for instance, back in 2021, when everyone was obsessed with Web3. The amount of pitches that would say Web3, Web3, Web3 was wild. Blockchain everywhere, right? And many times people didn't even understand why. And I think it's very similar right now. Like, you have a lot of pitches, you're saying AI, everything. Because also as a founder, all of the information that you get out there in the internet is like, if you don't have AI in your model, you're just not going to raise. Like, no one. And you do talk to some investors and they'll say like, I only invest in AI because that's what everyone's doing. So I think it's important to just maybe have some of those things that are appetizing, but at the same time, make sure that you have clarity of the problem that you're solving for, and also a little bit on the solution. So instead of saying we're revolutionizing AI with, no, we're revolutionizing efficiency with AI, you want to say something along the lines of, we help small manufacturers reduce raw material waste by 30% utilizing AI. So you're telling me what you're actually doing. You're giving me a bit of a parallel of how impactful this is. And then on top of that, you're telling me like the nice word that I want to hear. Not AI for the sake of AI, but applied AI. Unless you're building LLMs, but reality is most people are building solutions to like different problems. So I think that's something that's very simple, but also incredibly important. And one way to quickly showcase this is whenever you have a pitch deck, usually you have your first slide, and you would be surprised at the craziest things that people put in those slides. Usually the first slide is literally like the logo of your company or the name of your company, maybe some sort of visual, and then a tagline. And that tagline is incredibly helpful because that tagline is going to help people understand what you do. And as a VC, you don't have time to look at all the decks. So you literally just have like maybe a minute. Sometimes, like if you're a responsible VC, you will actually relook at the deck right before the meeting because you go from meeting to meeting. And so you want to make sure that that one liner is something really clear. And I've seen so many people who want to try and put something that looks more like a vision or a mission or something that's really, I changed the world, but you want to try and simplify it into what do you do? Like, is this a B2B platform? Is this a payment company? Is this a marketplace? Like, what is it, right? Like, what type of animal are you utilizing? And just by doing that, it will help anchor that VC's mind or that investor's mind into, I am looking at a deck where everything that I'm going to see is going to reinforce that tagline. Like, I'm going to prove or disprove that this person is building something that will be this tagline. So already by having a really clear tagline, you won a lot of the battle. Now, the second green flag. And I would say the second green flag has to do a little bit about with what I mentioned initially, right? Like, and it is this concept of founder market fit. Before I continue, actually, maybe I ask for a little bit of a raise of hands. How many people here have actually tried to raise before? Because this is also going to help me adapt my messaging as I go. I'm going to stop sharing just to be able to see people. Feel free to also just digitally raise your hand if you don't have a way to raise your hand. Okay, I raise a one person, but you can say you successfully. That's the second, third. Okay. I know at least two others. Anyone else? Okay. So let's say half the class has sort of tried to raise previously. Let's continue. That gives me some idea. Okay, so some of you might have already encountered these things and you can like comment on it, or we can later on talk about like the things that you've seen. I'm happy to also just answer those on the Q&A. Can you all see my screen well? I think you can, no? Okay, fantastic. All right, so founder market fit. Just as a bit of context for the ones who've never heard this word. So founder market fit is a very simple concept. What it means is this the right person to be building in this market? I started by saying that when you're an early stage investor, if you have one rule, is you want to invest in people who are extremely capable of doing hard things and actually succeeding at them. And then secondly, that are building in a market that is going to be profitable, that is growing. You want to go with the trend. You don't want to go shrinking, you know, like you wouldn't invest in Kodak when you realize that everyone else is moving towards something more digital. You want to invest in something that is really going to grow. And that match between founder and market is what people call founder market fit. Is this the right person? And there are many ways in which you can show founder market fit. Like one of the first questions that most VCs ask whenever they get to meet you, because they want to make you feel comfortable. And in the end, it's a conversation. It's not like, I will throw you, I don't know, 2 million in this first meeting. So first they try and get to know you. And they will ask you, oh, so tell me a little bit about you. Why did you decide to build what you're building? And what they're testing there is founder market fit. So basically you need to make sure that whenever you answer that question, you share a little bit of your life story, hopefully shortly, not super long. Don't tell them about which school you went to unless it's really relevant. Or like who you dated, like no, just keep it compact, but at the same time, also intertwine it with your company story. Because what they're ideally, you want to show you've been passionate about this your whole life, or you have some really cool insights through your work, or through your family, or through whatever, your friend, whoever. But you have really good insights on how to solve for this problem. um, you have credibility because maybe you work in that area or in that market, and then you also understand how the market works, right? So you want to show I've been able to do really hard things. I've been able to gather some insider knowledge that most people don't understand, and this is why I will succeed. So you want to share why you and show the connection to the problem. Remember at the early stages, and this is very different when you're a Series A, but I think no one here is actually Series A. Because when you're Series A, numbers don't lie, you know? It's very rare that you're able to raise money if you don't have the right metrics. But when you're just starting, most of the people will invest in something sometimes pre-revenue. Nowadays, it's a hard time to raise if you're not doing a fully AI company. So if you're not doing a fully AI company, and you don't have metrics yet, all you have is yourself. And investors back founders, not just the idea. Because idea reality is whatever, you know, like anyone can have ideas. But the thing that's gonna win is the execution. And having founder market fit gives me a little bit more trust of, hey, this person is gonna be able to execute and is gonna be able to persevere through the hardships and all of the crazy things that will happen in the journey. So you wanna tell them why you're the right person to fix this problem. That's what they need to come out with already in the first conversation. Green flag 3, traction or evidence of learning. So what I mean with this is sometimes, like obviously, and this is maybe slightly controversial or zero controversial. I actually think most people think like this, but they don't want to say it. So I work a lot with women, and what that means is that most of the times I work with really amazing individuals, and I'm not saying every woman is a saint, but there's a lot of really amazing women out there with really great titles who don't necessarily share them because they don't want to show off. And so they'll be like, I don't know, maybe I was like the first employee at like Delivery Hero, random unicorn here in Germany. But I will not find that out until like I have 3 calls with you. If you have something like that, say it on the first thing. And by the way, I used to be the first employee at that. Or by the way, I also have an MBA from this really cool school. Also know when it's really not that high end, right? Like if you don't have that, whatever, just don't mention it, you know? You work with what you have. You can also not create fake stuff. And when you don't necessarily have, so if you do have it, mention it here on this part of founder market fit. If you don't have it, the other way to convince people, even if you're an underdog founder, is traction. Like honestly. And traction can be sometimes revenue, yes. Like it can be like, look at my pie chart. Like I'm actually growing. I just launched my, let's say, beta, and all of these people are already paying me. Sometimes you don't have something paid. I have, let's say, in the case that you're doing a B2B type of company, you only have LOIs, which are letters of intent. That's really cool, actually. That's how most B2B companies convince investors to fund them, because they show, hey, I already have like talks with this and this and this other institution. Remember, do not lie about those things because lies have very short legs, as they say. But I think it's important that you mention, if you do have those things, I'm already in talks with blah, 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 blah. So that's also a really great way to create that trust in you. Now, the fourth green flag, I think we're all preconditioned to say red flag, but it's actually green flag. It's understanding the funding game. And what I mean with that is you need to know what stage, you need to kind of know your target, know who you're talking to. Like if it's a person who's never necessarily invested in, let's say, B2C, and you're a B2C founder and you're talking to a fund that's focused only in B2B SaaS, chances that you're going to get an investment are basically zero, you know, very, very, very low chance. So this is something that you could save yourself from, because it's going to create a ton of frustration, and then it's also going to create like a waste of time. So make sure that you actually research the people that you talk to. I think most people probably know this, but maybe you don't. So I'm just going to say it. Every single VC has a thesis, and a thesis is basically like this mission where they say, I, VC Amela, invest in women-led startups that are in the pre-seed and seed stages. And I invest tickets between blah and blah. So let's say 500K and $2 million in each round. And I'm a lead investor. Like these things are things that sometimes you find on the website under the thesis of investment. Or sometimes you can ask whenever you have the conversation, say, hey, do you have a thesis of your fund? Like, what do you usually invest in? And that's going to help you like save time, right? Because if that person already tells you, no, actually, I only invest in marketplaces, and you're not a marketplace, you can kind of stop the meeting there and say, oh, I didn't realize that. I'm sorry. Well, I'm actually not building a marketplace. I'm building blah. Happy to continue having the chat. Maybe you can refer me to other people, or also happy to give you back your time. Like, don't try and push it because it's just not going to lead anywhere, right? So it's important to know what stage the fund is investing in and who you're talking to. Sometimes you can even ask like what their last fundraise was. If I wouldn't necessarily ask them how much money is there to deploy, but I would try and find that out. And you can find that out on like TechCrunch and different things like Crunchbase. But sometimes that's complex because I know founders just don't have that much time. I would say if you already know the stage, whether they're pre-seed or seed, and like the ticket size, that already gives you a pretty good parallel. And then I would say that, well, like this little bubble says, smart founders choose their investors strategically. Like maybe to give you an anecdote of what this can look like, at some point I was helping a founder who is a marketplace on the B2C space. And she told me she had talked to a gazillion people and she was starting to get frustrated. I looked at the list of the people she had talked to. She had mostly talked to B2B funds. And I was like, why are you doing that? Obviously, she didn't know what she didn't know. But what I'm trying to save you is from that frustration. Because sometimes people just tell you pitch, and then you might be like, oh, okay, I have to pitch at every option. No, take control of your own race, take control of your own destiny. And like, it's rather that you go to a few well targeted than a gazillion untargeted. You might have a better return, or at least that's kind of like the school I'm in. And then the last green flag, openness and coachability. So don't try to fight people when they tell you stuff. Like sometimes people will tell you stuff and it feels a bit hurtful because like as a founder, you're building your baby and your baby is beautiful to you. Otherwise you wouldn't be building it and risking your whole life. But at the same time, there is a gazillion people who might think differently, and that's okay. Like at some point, one of the worst rejections I ever had was from a man I truly admire, and I was like, my heart broke. And he told me, Anais, you do agree that sometimes smart people can disagree, no? And I was like, yes, X, I get it. And I just knew that I didn't need to fight back, like he respects me. He just thinks very differently from me on like market trends and stuff. And I was like, c'est la vie. I'm gonna continue. And then I actually asked him, oh, what are the risks that you see? And it ended up being incredibly insightful because that man is like among the smartest people I know. And he gave me a lot of really cool things that I needed to look out for. And some of them have proven to be right. And whenever they prove to be right, I'm like, fuck, this man did tell me this. Why? How? Maybe it's just the age. And then some other things have proven not to be right, And then I'm like, okay, I still have a chance. So that can happen a lot. So whenever you do find that people have a very different opinion to you, just take it as feedback. Be like, okay, maybe help me understand more. They will give you some insight. You can still gain something from that conversation and then leave gracefully, and then focus on the other people who understand more of the problem that you're solving for. Like, don't try to convince people that don't seem to be convinced because it just makes you look like you're not coachable. And one of the things that people appreciate a lot is when a founder is coachable. It doesn't mean that they're going to be doing the job for you because, I mean, in the end, like an investor invests in a founder that will figure it out on their own. If you're asking for too much help, that's a red flag. But at the same time, like it's nice if you kind of can give your 2 cents and then you as a founder say, okay, these 2 cents, 1 cent is actually useful, the other one really not useful, I throw it away and I keep the good things with me. And then the other thing that I would add to this is like you never know. A lot of these relationships are built over time. So I have one investor that I pitched, I think, like 3 times. And like the third time I was a bit like, I don't know if I should pitch this person again. But then I thought, you know what, whatever. I mean, they can just reject me anyways. It doesn't matter. Like I'm not harassing anyone. I'm just asking, and I'm also showing my progress. And the third one was a charm, and they said yes. So that can happen. Sometimes it will be like, no, I'm just not there. Um, and then you can learn. I would also always encourage you to like save all of those feedback gems, because feedback is truly a gift. And then you can understand what things of your storytelling need to be changed, what things of your deck need to be changed, what are the usual things that people are asking themselves for. Maybe another hint on things to do here is if you have a data room, you can even create like a FAQ document. Like for instance, at the beginning of your journey, you will realize all the people ask you the same thing. So you might as well just build out a proper answer, and then you can give a teaser of that answer once they ask you, and then also say, hey, later I'll send you a document with all of the information on that, especially when it has to do with numbers, right? Because then you can show that you've properly thought about it. And I think that speaks highly of you. So before we go on to common, okay, I'm good with the time. I just wanted to check super quickly on the time. So now that we've looked at all of the green flags, I want to talk a little bit about some of the common red flags. So these are like, you say this and you end up looking like Sarah Bullock here, you know? Ah! Or like, I think we posted some sort of meme on our Instagram stories that was like some dude with a gazillion red flags on top of him trying to convince someone. And you don't know what you don't know, right? So I've also been a walking red flag myself at some point, and hopefully every day less so. But hopefully you can also avoid them. So do not say that you do not have competition. Everyone has competition. If you don't have competition, that's really like a really bad sign. It's a bad sign because that means no one sees an opportunity on whatever you're seeing as an opportunity. Like if there is an opportunity there to be chased, money to be made, like impact to be done, there is competition for sure. Sometimes your competition is even for free. Or sometimes your competition is analog. Sometimes your competition is a patch of 5 apps. Who knows? But there's gotta be competition, and it's great if there is competition. Competition makes you better. I love my competitors. Like sometimes I'm like, yes, my competitor figured this out, so I don't have to figure it out. I can just kind of emulate and adapt to my thinking. Amazing. I don't have to figure everything out. And I'm pretty sure my competitor looks at me the same, and they're like, how did she figure that out? And so like we compete. Next thing, don't oversell your future traction. I do think there is a point to say you have to talk about your numbers confidently, and I think it's important that you do your financial projection. I'm not such a big fan of pitching your financial projection like live, because I think a lot of it ends up being like, if you're good with numbers, you might be able to pass on. If you're not good with numbers, you will fall. Um, and I just don't think the conversation should be about that. I think if you want to show traction, you'd rather show your financial model like on the data room, and then people can properly analyze it and ask you questions about it. You can actually say, I don't know, percentage X of the raise is gonna go to this, percentage X is gonna go to this other thing bucket. These are my main cost drivers. This is my cost of acquisition, stuff like that. But like, I think there's really not much of a need to sell for this future traction. Like actually most of the crazy red flags that I've seen is people who promise me that in the next year they're gonna make 2 million and 3 million and stuff like that. And I'm just like, based on what? You know? Then it's ideal that you actually have some clear milestones. Like whenever people wire you money, you need to know what to do with it. You cannot just be like, oh, I'll figure it out later. And ideally, you're chasing money because you want to grow, because you see an opportunity, like not to pay yourself, not to save the company, always to reach X milestone. And so it's important that you kind of say, okay, if I get this, these are the two things I will do right away. Like I already know how I'm going to invest this. And then the other thing is poor follow up or missing a data room. Like there are contrary opinions on this, but I do think that especially if you're a woman, most likely you will get asked for a data room. It's just reality of things. So I'd rather you be over prepared than under prepared. And I think most of the founders at Preseed that have a data room stand out. This is not to put you too much pressure. Like for instance, at some point I had one Amelia tell me, "Oh my God, Anais, they asked me for a data room, and now I need to calculate 5 years or 7 years of revenue." And I was like, "How much revenue do you have right now?" And I think she had like $1,000 that month. I was like, whatever you're gonna put there is gonna be more of a wish than a reality. So if you're talking to a pre-seed investor, most likely what you're gonna put in there is like 1 to 2 years of like projections, ideally two. And I think in those 2 years, what you wanna show is that you can make math and that you know what your cost drivers are and your revenue drivers are, and you will continue to update that as you go. But do have a data room. It sounds stupid, but I actually think most of the conversations fall flat because of poor follow-up. Like, especially a lot of people I think feel uncomfortable with following up. They're like, ah, no, they don't like me. No one knows. Like, maybe they just forgot about you, or maybe you just didn't see the email. So follow up at least 3 times at every conversation. It's also bad on you if you don't follow up and then you follow up like 2 months after, because reality is it's not an investor's like job to chase you unless you're really the hottest deal of the summer, because then they will take a flight and drop their family to go find you. It's really on you to make yourself visible. So you should follow up. Maybe like to give you a bit of a number, you can follow up after 4 days, once a week, something like that. It's good enough. Then do not tell people to sign an NDA before you share more. That's like the biggest red flag. And I think it's so funny because so many people do it. Like whenever a founder tells me, "Oh, yeah, I want to share stuff with you, but my project is so special. So I would need you to sign an NDA before you see anything." I'm like, "Okay, good luck, bye." It's really like no, because ideas are there forever. Imagine if you're an investor that has to sign an NDA for every single deck that they see. You would be able to see nothing because you see so many things. Like investors are really not that much smarter. They just have asymmetry of information. They see a gazillion people trying the same thing. And it was mind blowing to me because at some point I remember the first time like I was building this like fintech in the consumer space, and I just thought, I've thought about this so well. And then I flipped to the other side and I was an investor and I saw like a bunch of people trying to build the same thing I was building. Some of them with better insights, some of them with worse insights. So everyone, like all ideas have been tried. Uh, and that's why please do not ask for an NDA whenever you talk to an investor. Now, how to show your green flags in practice. I mean, I think I've already kind of talked a lot about it while I was going through each of the slides, but I would say in terms of deck, have a clear story, have some visuals, not just all visuals, but I do think the visual side is important. If a deck looks aesthetically pleasing, it's likely going to be better picked up than if it's not. I mean, reality is people should be able to invest in a deck that is in black and white, but it still matters, like if everyone looks amazing and you're in black and white, not so great. Blurb, like make sure that you have a blurb. We actually have a formula for blurbs and Amela, but the very basic thing to know is like you need to show company X is solving blah through the solution. Here's our traction. Here's the person that's doing that. Why? Because you want to talk about the problem, you want to talk about the solution, you want to talk about who you are, because in the end they're investing in you, not so much in the company yet. And then if you have some traction, show it because it's really helpful. I see one question, I think. Okay, no worries. If anyone still has questions, you can drop them. I'm about to finish with this part. And then the data room, like have a data room that's organized, investor ready. It's ideal if you have your first call, right after the first call, share your data room. Don't share your data room before the first call because I think it's just exposing yourself too much. So like having a blurb and a deck that are good, that should be good enough for like a first conversation. And then afterwards you can share more information if they seem to be interested. If they don't seem to be interested, it's all good. You lost that one. You move on to the next person. In terms of tone, I think whenever you know what you're talking about, people feel it. So, and I know this is harder to show, but I think there are multiple ways, right? Like learn a little bit about fundraising. Like part of the reason why I'm doing this is because at Amela, we've been able to gather a ton of these stories, like help material, and we actually have a course. So I'll also be sending a follow-up later for people who want to check that out, because knowing what's good, what's bad, like how to do it also gives you a lot of confidence, because you're not walking like blind into a thing. You know what you're facing. And then also like making sure that you don't schedule like a zillion calls in one day. I think it's crazy to try and do, I don't know, 8 investor calls in one day. Because imagine if like 2 of them went bad, then you basically feel like people punch you in your face and you have to still be there. Like a lot of it is about energy. It's about how you connect with the person. It's about what you transmit. And so that's why I would advise that do 3 to 4 at most per day. And yeah, I think every touch point is a chance to show your readiness. So yeah, key takeaways. Well, if we want to kind of summarize them again, investors back clarity, not so much hype, even though sometimes it looks like we back hype. Fundraising, a lot of it is with pattern matching. I think by being able to show how you have found your market fit, that you're prepared, like that's going to help, and how you've been able to accomplish other hard things in life. You can control most signals and kind of utilize them. There is a lot of strategies to use in terms of like following up and creating FOMO and all of that. But I think the things that I try to share today are some things that are very basic, but I think can really make a big difference whenever you're looking to present yourself into investors. And yeah, that's already going to make you stand out. It's really not that hard to stand out once you know the game. I think there might be another person. Oh yeah, okay. So let's turn it into Q&A, and I'm gonna stop sharing and utilize the rest of the time. So the first question is from Danny. Danny, feel free to also just come up and ask your question and give me some more context. Like, I think we have enough time for that, so.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So my question is about the data rooms. Specifically, what sort of documentation is most critical? I ask because some investors have given me a list that is different to another investor. So in terms of showing readiness and being prepared, is there like, I don't know, a 5 or 6 docs that absolutely everybody wants to see and a few other ones that are more discretionary from there?
Yeah, before I answer that, what stage are you in? Like, is this your first race?
Yeah, first raise pre-seed.
Okay, fantastic. All right. So everyone's going to have a different opinion, like literally. But what I would say is focus on the things that you can actually show. Like you want to show the necessary, not too much. And at the same time, you also like cannot show things that you don't have. Like for instance, people who ask you for a 5-year projection, I kind of already dismiss them. Like they're probably not great investors because you pre-seed. How are you going to have a 5-year projection? That's a lie, you know? So definitely have financials. Definitely include your deck again. I know it sounds silly, but it's always important to include it again. People, you will be surprised. People forget they have too many things. They look at a biotech company and then they look at an edtech and their head is shambles. So having your deck there is helpful. If you have some sort of traction, add it. I think if you have traction, generally, it's always good to mention it, because then people are like, okay, this is not just in her head. This is actually something that she's tried. And these are the trials. These are the things that she's been able to accomplish. If you already have cool investors in, I would also include them. Like I wouldn't include like their whole bio, but just a list of those people. Like maybe, let me rephrase this. It's important that you include the team and like why they're relevant. You already probably have a slide on that on your pitch deck. But if you can include like a nice summary of like, I'm Danny and I've been doing blah, 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 blah for this many years. And like my head of engineering has been doing this for many years. Because sometimes you don't fully see it in LinkedIn. Ideally, you also want to optimize your LinkedIn because most people are lazy and they're just going to go to LinkedIn. But it can still be helpful. And then you can create this section that's called like team and advisors investors. And then you add it there, right? Because what that's going to build is credibility. One thing that I didn't mention, but it's kind of like the ethos of everything I said, fundraising is about creating trust. Do people trust you or not? Like money is hard to earn. Like no one has money to give away. And so if they're going to give you money, they need to trust you. And it's hard to build trust if they just met you, right? So you need to aid them into building that trust. why should they trust you? So everything in your data room, everything in your pitch, in your conversations is about building that bridge of trust that you will do your absolute best to make this happen. And so it's having the team there, it's having the financials, it's having like financial team, traction, the deck. And I would also say maybe some legal documents. Like, don't put all your safes there. I think that's unnecessary. Like, one person tried to put all of their, and I was like, don't put your full cap table. You share your cap table if they need it. But if not, really, there's no need. Like, why do they need to know how many people, how much they invested? Like, is it really relevant? No. They should be able to make their own decision on their own. But I do think it's important to know that the company is incorporated. Like, maybe put like your certificate of incorporation in Cayman or in Delaware or in the UK or wherever you are, because then they know how old the company is, and they will probably ask you for more stuff. Sometimes you have to customize and add additional stuff if they ask for it. But I think what I've said is the base. Maybe two extra ones, if you want to do extra stuff, is if you already have some sort of mock of the product, like I think a really smooth move is to actually build a tiny Loom video, like, Loom, where you showcase the product. Because, like, I mean, usually people have Murphy's Law, right? Like, you want to show your product and it just all fell the moment you had your biggest conversation. So you avoid that by just having it there. People can just see you go through the product and you kind of give a talk on how this works and why you did something in one way or another. Like, make sure that it's not longer than like a minute and a half, because I think people just don't listen to stuff that's like longer than that. And then another really smooth thing to do was, I forgot. But if I remember, I tell you. I think those are hopefully things that you can implement.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else who has questions? Don't be shy. If you didn't understand anything, it's also fine to say, I did not understand. I need to know what this is. Or if you know everything, like, feel free to ask me a more complex question. I am happy to be challenged. Okay, we are all shy today. All right. So look, let me see. I think someone messaged me on the other side. No, that was fine. Then I'm going to think a little bit about like what I was just telling in terms of data room. What was it that I wanted to say on the data room that you could add that's also smooth? It's silly, but also add a picture of your team together. Like, if you're all in the same place, people invest in people. So it's nice to know who you are, It's nice to see, this is what and look friendly, Smiley there, and they're like, I want to invest in this team. They all look cool. And they look like it's not just one person. So for instance, in my data room, I literally have a picture of my team. At some point, I broke up with my co-founder, and then I was like, fuck, now I'm going to be there alone in this picture. So I just put a picture of like an event from America, so it looked like we were a bunch. And I was not alone. So things like that. I think it's important to have like silly things like that. I would also highly recommend to use, thank you for the heart, I don't know who it was. I was like, I cannot look lonely. I can be alone, but never lonely. And then the other thing that I think it's important to have is like a good CRM. We haven't talked about it today, but it's important to have a good CRM to follow up on things and stuff. Like, we'll send some like further info by email, because we do a lot of that on the fundraising bootcamp. And yeah, like, I think most of you probably found me on LinkedIn. Some of you are obviously Amelia, so those I know. But if you have further questions, you know where to find me. So I'm going to give everyone their time back, unless there is one person who wants to jump in, and then we say goodbye. Oh, actually, before we end, maybe we take a picture for my socials, since I am trying to build in public. So if you want to be in the Instagram of Amela, let's take a picture together. Awesome. At least one person said, I will be in the Instagram of Amela. Kat has been multiple times featured there. We are partially the brand of Momo. We have a really cool perk. If you happen to be in Mexico City, you can get grilled cheese with a cookie and a coffee, which I did get the other day.
And not only grilled cheese, it can also be another sandwich.
Okay, I thought it was, well, maybe I just eat cheese. So yeah. We're gonna continue to build stuff here too. I'm planning to get more consumer founders so we can get fun perks, Lynn. Okay, so Sil, let me know whenever we take the picture.
Yes. I'm going to count to three, so everyone smile. One, two, three. Done. Thank you.
Awesome. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Bye. Oh, qué rápido se fue toda la gente. Ya puedes quitar el recording.